The Planarcadia War is underway, and the Lord Ravager has returned to finish what he started centuries ago. Yes, the world of Elation is under siege from an opponent unlike anything we have ever seen before. The polar opposite of the unfeeling, headless, and brainless monster that we fought in Amphorius, Asat Pramad is a scheming, sinister, and unpredictable menace with an ability that makes him near unbeatable. But even though the reveal of a new Lord Ravager is very much terrifying and threatening, this was not the most shocking thing that was revealed in this patch. Because in this story, we learned about what our lovely Navigator is and where she came from, along with what happened involving the Veracity and Elation's clash, and of course, Blade's evolution and character development that I just happened to predict in its entirety. Oh yeah, we have got a ton of things to talk about, including a definitive answer to the question, what is Himeko, that I believe was revealed in 4.0. So without further ado, this is Planarcadia's War of Destruction Explained. But first, I have a clips channel now, Nova Impact's Isolation, so just in case you missed my stream and want to see the 4.3 story, I'll be uploading my reactions and maybe some memes from time to time, so if you want more of me, you know where to be. On to the video. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is the same as always. I go through the 4.3 story with less jumping around and time skips to make this story as understandable as possible, so that we can all be on the same page for when I present the many theories I have planned for the future. Good? Good. Alright, so we begin the chaos of this story back at the Astral Express after the defeat of Full Wish. We meet Marge, who joins us in watching the corrupt media cast doubt on the utterly obvious crimes done by Full Wish, and then explain our story to Marge, who acknowledges just how much more mature the Trailblazer has become when things get serious. We have Amphorius to thank for that, and unfortunately Marge missed 90% of it. But anyway, Marge takes some time to clear her head, we take a nap, and we wake up to Himeko, who reminisces on her time being the one and only Express crew member with Pom Pom, and mentions an individual she promised to visit the next time the Phantom Moon waxed full, who I think is Graphia, but that's besides the point. She also said that she would make the most of this borrowed life. More on that later. But in Himeko fashion, she doesn't tell us anything and instead lets us know that Yalguang has a message for us. And she just happens to be down the hall and congratulates us on our victory over Full Wish, calling us Ishvara, which means something similar to how you address a god in Hindi, but since her ability is called Eye of Ishvara in terms of seeing weal and woe, I'm pretty sure this just means her calling us fateless in the most polite and complimentary way possible. But anyway, she lets us know about the Veracity's remains in the Torn Scroll and her plan to use it to consume the abundance within Blade. Because an ever-hungry Leviathan consuming an ever-regenerating abundance tree emanator sounds like the perfect counter to Shuhu. Though she isn't exactly sure if this will kill Blade or not, since not even her divinations give her a clear answer. She also has a plan on how she is going to handle Asat Pramad, but we'll talk about that more later as well. Because after having a quick meeting with the Express crew,
you knocked out the mastermind behind all those creepy whatever their name is. I didn't get to see it myself, but Don Hung described it for me. You killed it!
I've seen the footage of your fight with Full Wish.
we take our solo mission to Inkford Hermitage to meet up with Graphia as Evanesia requested. But on our way, we meet Nihilux, who's been arrested and enslaved by the IPC. Long story short, Pearl tracked her down for her antics at Perlix Corp, and Nihilux has no money due to continuing to fall for crypto scams. So she is flat broke and in debt to the IPC. So they made her a company asset until she pays off her debt in 56 days. And by that, I mean, they literally refer to her as a company asset.
I let my guard down for just 1 second, and corporate asset, I mean Miss Colt, escaped. Now that's scary.
Very dehumanizing, but very much on brand for the IPC. But anyway, this means we are both headed for Inkford Hermitage together. So we board the ship Pearl sent for us and we set sail. When we get there, this definitely not suspicious Wispe hitches a ride on us and we meet this little guy named Casper, who is a former frost giant and member of Graphia's army that fought against Asat Pramad all those years ago. And he tells us that Inkford Hermitage is where Imaginae go when they run out of wish power, and introduces us to these unfortunate Imaginae that were created out of people's desire for Graphia's return, which quite fittingly shows that Graphia is seen as a mythical, godlike figure. But before we can convince Casper to tell us how to summon Graphia, Nihilux gets taken away, a detail that will be important later. But anyway, we get Casper to tell us how to summon Graphia by having a snowball fight with him, kinda simulating his wartime heyday, and he tragically says that he was the only survivor of the war, him other than Graphia. And he tells us to light floor lamps and to call her by name near her old residence. So we do that, and she shows up. Or Nihilux shows up, because apparently she somehow got away from those two guards and found us. And then she does some heavy foreshadowing.
I just reached the real versus fake Himeko arc in my comic. Let me pay my respects.
And then is found out by Graphia, who just happens to have the two IPC guards with her. So Nihilux gets taken away again, kicking and screaming, and we are left face to face with the definitely real and not at all fake Graphia. And we give her our mask to identify ourselves, definitely something that won't backfire on us later, and she recounts the story of how the Express crashed on Plain Arcadia. And to make this as simple as possible, I'll just cut the suspense and explain what really happened here. You see, Asat Pramad was doing destruction things until he came across this baby that was dying. So he decided on a whim to transform this baby into a kind of Void Ranger type of human being, and then raised her as his daughter. But one day, she found the Astral Express crash landing in Plain Arcadia that Asat Pramad later says that he also caused. But living in seclusion for so long and seeing the Astral Express, Graphia was enamored by it and went to go see what it was about. And when she did, she saw the Nameless fighting a fruitless battle against a massive army of Void Rangers, and also watched each and every single one of them be overwhelmed and defeated fighting for Ahatopia. So now we know why Himeko was the only Nameless on the Express. All of the others were dead. They didn't abandon the Trailblaze, they were all straight up dead. But witnessing this heroism and the sacrifices made by the Nameless for the sake of complete strangers, something changed in Graphia, which led to her becoming the mother of Imagenesis and using herself as the nail, sealing away the world on canvas in a desperate attempt to lock out Asat Pramad. And as long as she lives, the scroll stays sealed. And Asat Pramad can't get his hands on the remains of Ouroboros and use them to destroy Plain Arcadia. Also, my theory of Asat Pramad using the remains of Ouroboros to make Void Ranger armies ended up being completely right, and he even taught Graphia how to do it. And with that, this 100% real Graphia leaves and we continue to Myriad Wish Grove. And here is where I need to make a perspective shift, because we'll have to catch up with the Trailblazer later. Because while this was all happening, Yao Guang made her way to the Torn Scroll and discussed some enigmata facts about the IPC with Pearl, which probably has some truth to them in there, but that's a subject for another day. Because Dan Heng and Welt Yang show up, and we get our first confirmed mention of Welt using his Hersher of Reason powers, which is awesome. I told you guys he still has those powers.
It was Mr. Yang's talent of creation out of nothing that allowed us to reproduce dozens of plumes and complete the deployment with such speed.
But put simply, as long as Welt Yang knows how to make something, he can create it from absolutely nothing. Yeah, it's really broken, and I wish he used it more. He can create way more than synthetic black holes and control gravity. But anyway, the reason why he used his power to do this was to spread Yao Guang's warding talisman plumes all across Plain Arcadia to form a Decalite reflection barrier, which is just the Utrecht's version of the Matrix of Prescience. And using that, we can find Asat Pramad and learn what he's doing and pretty much track him wherever he goes. Because in Hun fashion, there is no defense, only stronger offense. Don't prepare for Asat Pramad, hunt him down. It doesn't work though, and I'll explain why later. But anyway, our lead hunter in this operation is none other than the wolf himself, Mr. Ashvale, who's partnered with March for whatever reason, and she is really snippy here. But you see, the reason why these two are in the tavern in the first place is that they are looking for intel on Asat Pramad and the Veracity. But the fools are fools, and even though they ask the best NPC in the entire game, Dawai Chungus, about the Veracity, he doesn't help us much.
And I looked at...
However, after going through this whole fiasco with Sparksy, we come to the conclusion that all of these stories and rumors we heard about all surround this masked fool named En route doing something to the Veracity. And as we come to that conclusion, Sampo appears to tell us everything he knows about En route, who just happens to be the most famous of the masked fools, who apparently at some point lost faith in the Elation and left the tavern with the words, "Elation has been dead for a long time," and went on his own journey to find the world's end. We also learn at some point that the Dicehead Hat Man got these boots on this journey to the world's end, called the Everstride boots, that allow him to always appear where he isn't wanted. A very strange ability to have, but that's what he's got, and that's all Sampo's got. But luckily enough, Yao Guang arranged a meeting with Ron Mei, and she further proves that the Genie Society is just the best faction, because when they show up, everything becomes concrete. And she, who wishes to become an Aeon, confirms that Ouroboros is dead, because at first Pearl was being very vague about it, but now we know. And in fact, Planar Arcadia isn't the only world with Ouroboros' remains in them. And Aha has just been running around putting abundance trees on all of the planets with Ouroboros' remains in them. And by sealing the power of Veracity with abundance and balancing the two out, because ever consuming, ever growing, Aha siphons out the Veracity's power and turns it into the Phantas Moon games. So Planar Arcadia is far from the only world with a Phantas Moon game cycle. And Aha has been running around doing this to worlds and sealing off the fragments of Ouroboros' body. Why? Because apparently Aha and Ouroboros' beef go back into primordial times, which I'm assuming is before the Swarm disaster. And during this primordial time, Aha, as what seems to be a fatal blow, stole the concept of taste from the path of Veracity, which is also a subject for another day, because that feat is utterly insane. That's like when Silver Wolf stole that arm off of herself. That is just something the Elation can just do. But that's a subject for another day. That's a whole different topic for a video. So going back to the story here, we also learned that Ashvale got his shadow of the Veracity from IC, the former Express Navigator. And long story short, we connect the dots of En route's Veracity ties to IC and the world's end, and we get Asat Pramad, who shows up right on cue. So En route is IC, and IC is Asat Pramad. They are all the same being. But this is the last that we hear from this group, so now we got to catch up with the Stellaron Hunters, who have been having a lot of really wholesome moments, but I gotta say, it makes perfect sense, because this faction is the only family Silverwolf has ever had, and Blade is just as much of a softie as Dan Hung is. And besides Ashvale saying his goodbyes to Blade and calling Silverwolf a cub because she's small and they're both wolves, they meet us at the Myriad Wish Grove, and we summon the real Graphia, who takes us to the world in Canvas. And after having the most painful goodbye we've ever had in Planar Arcadia, Blade throws himself into the Veracity's maw, where his entire life flashes before his eyes in the form of the weapons he's made and come in contact with, until he reaches his final moments and he fails to overcome his desire to live. And I always knew it. I made a video about Blade's fear of death a long time ago. I knew it. The reason being that he wishes deep down to reforge himself as he would a blade into a person he wants to be. And Shuhu takes this wish and throws his healing into maximum overdrive, content in using this wish for Blade to remain living, to torture him into being consumed and healed over and over and over again until his will breaks. However, Blade had other plans and instead took this veracity power and fused it into himself, using the veracity to refine the abundance within him, doing the same thing Aha did with Plain Arcadia in his own body, balancing the abundance with veracity, thus curing the Mara and making him even stronger than he was before and taking his life back into his own hands. But while this is all happening, the Trailblazer, Silverwolf, and Graphia mourn their thought-fallen friend, and Asat Pramad shows up right where he isn't wanted. Probably because he thought our mourning was funny, but he's here now and absolutely breaks the lore wide open. Because this is where the news is broken that Graphia is a human turned Void Ranger, and everyone in her bloodline has the Weathering Curse because of the destruction in her blood. But to make things even worse, this guy rubs it all in by saying the only reason why he hasn't returned to finish blowing up Plain Arcadia is because he was bored with it. Then proceeds to Aura Farm and activate Graphia's true Void Ranger form, and then we have to fight her. He also leaves after doing this for some reason. I could have sworn he was just gonna finish us off here because Silverwolf at this point can't use level 999 because she's basically used it too much already in such a short time and is now risking being taken over by her other self again, so without that trump card, we're kinda cooked. But Asat Pramad left and we get to live. I'm not questioning why. Bro could have ended the entire game right here. So now is where we get to talk about Little Miss Mysterious herself, Himeko, who makes a call to her father and takes a walk around the Arcadia reliving past memories that never happened because he was an absent father, and then they reach the Dean's office, where they discuss how exactly Himeko defeated the Herald of Death, Marcus Antali. And just like we knew from the text, this guy was an absolute psycho, and Himeko was the one who poured all of her wish power into a single giant arm that crushed and incapacitated the Herald of Death. But also, she didn't win the Phantom Moon Games because she didn't have any wish power after performing that feat. But Ryusuke then cuts in to reveal that she wasn't even alone in this feat, because she had a second self with her, an imaginated and idealized second self. A second self that carried on after the death of the original as the navigator of the Astral Express, living the dreams of her artist. Now, this is all information that Himeko herself does not confirm because she never confirms anything, but what is confirmed is that this guy is not the real Ryusuke. And in an incredible twist, Asat Pramad had replaced Ryusuke decades ago when the original Himeko was 6 years old. So in her entire life, she had never known her real father. It was Asat Pramad from the moment she met him. Where did she meet him? At her mother's funeral. Asat Pramad started this giant twisted joke at a place of mourning. What is wrong with this guy? Oh, and he also says that he did all of this because he felt like it, and he himself doesn't really even know why he took it this far. But at the end of the day, he enjoyed being a father. It was so nice, he had to do it twice. He is Graphia's dad and Himeko's dad. This guy is the girl dad that stepped up, stepped in, and stepped right back out. Absolutely insane work. Then he attacks Himeko, somehow proves to himself that she's a fake, and fires hollow purple from the ceiling that Himeko then blocks, and the story ends on the cliffhanger of the century. So with all that said, it's theory time, because I think I can say that I know exactly what Himeko is. She is none other than a fused version of the original human Himeko and the imaginated Himeko. Something we know is possible because Sparkle and Sparksy did the same thing in 4.0. They spoiled this entire deal all the way back then. You see, when an artist with a decentered sense of self makes a self-portrait imagine, and that second self becomes more them than they are, that imagine can then absorb their artist and become the real person. Just like Sparksy merged Sparkle into herself for that brief moment, and since Himeko had the will to trailblaze and represented more of what Himeko was than the sick and dying human Himeko, she fused herself with her artist, an act that was most likely voluntary on both parties. Because when Himeko says this borrowed life, she means borrowed from herself, her artist. She can survive off of plain Arcadia as an Imagine because she is part human. She is the real Himeko now. And Sparkle once again spoiled this entire reveal in the first patch. And this fusing of Himeko with Himeko cured the weathering curse because as an Imagine she is ageless. But as a human, she doesn't really need wish power to survive. And to take this even further, since they fused, she has both people's memories, leading her to telling us different stories of how Himeko found the Express, because she has two stories of how Himeko found the Express. Human Himeko saw it crash, imaginated Himeko found it already broke down. Both stories are told and both are true because this being is two people. This blew my mind. She has a grave for the human Himeko, but that human Himeko is not in that grave. That human Himeko is a part of the Himeko we know now. Let's talk about Asat Pramad. In essence, he has these shoes that were mentioned earlier that allow him to appear in places that he isn't wanted, and he can also duplicate himself to appear in multiple places at the same time. He is essentially an evil version of Sparkle, which is the perfect Elation ability because Elation is chaotic good, and this guy is clearly chaotic evil. Because he could just be a good guy, and if he's a good guy, then he would always show up where the bad guys don't want him to be. But since he's a Lord Ravager, he always shows up where the good guys don't want him to be. So he could use this power for good. He just doesn't because he doesn't feel like it. And the range of his self-duplication seems to be planet-wide, but honestly, who knows? But this ability alone defeats Yao Guang's hunting and tracking strategy because how do you track a guy that is just everywhere at once and shape-shifting on a whim? You can't. But the main thing is how his die head works. You see, when he casts this die, he controls the probability of things happening. So for example, if he is fighting and he throws the die, if there is as small as a fraction of a percentage of a chance of him winning, he will guarantee that that specific string of events happens. Thereby, he spits in the face of Elation's randomness and the winning and losing not mattering aspect. So in a way, he makes his own script and forces everyone to adhere to it with his dice head. This is why he was flexing to Silverwolf in 4.2 about how he can write a script like Elio, because he essentially can.
Who exactly are you? Do you think you can write the script?
Oh, I imagine Elio's futile efforts look just like yours, don't they? I not only know it, I can hold the pen. The future you abandoned will, by my hand, make a return as a spicy comedy.
Just on a smaller scale, and what seems to be only events that he's involved in. But he still loses to Silverwolf level 999 in two ways. One, because she is so much stronger than him that he has a 0% chance of winning against her, and two, because her randomness being the peak of elation overrides his die most likely. So that ability is truly absurd and really broken to the point of where I don't think that we can really kill him, but he is beatable. And that is all I can say for now. Absolutely agonizing, absolutely chaotic, but absolute cinema. Because this is Plain Arcadia's War of Destruction Explained. I am going to have to make a different video to address more of what the deal with Himeko is, and if Aha is truly lost, and what Asat Pramad's motivation is. I got a lot of stuff to talk about, and I can't wait. But of course, we have to have the recap nice and thorough so that we set the foundation for the theories to come. I love this story, and for the first time ever, I streamed it and I had a great time. And again, if you want to see my reactions but you don't want to sit through the VOD, you know where to go. I can't wait to see where this is all going, because I can't say that this is better than Emphoria's quite yet, but it's a close second in my opinion, and Asat Pramad is the best Lord Ravager in terms of personality that we have ever seen. And I can't wait to see more of this chaotic jerk of a demon lord, but what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.